We already covered basics of routing and routing parameters in previous videos. In this video, we are going to learn about $route service which comes with ngRoute. We will also see on how to work with AJAX content after routing to specific view and show some progress messages while the routing content is being loaded or refreshed through AJAX. Route service. Before even jumping on to route service, let us ask a few questions for ourselves. The first one. Routing content gets cached. When you go to a specific route, AngularJS pulls down the content of it and caches it at client side. How do we reload it and refresh it? Is there any possible way to list out all the currently configured routes in my application? Imagine I am on a route with a couple of route parameters specified. How do I reload the same route with new parameters? I would like to capture all the routing requests and all the routing activities as well. So how do I know what route is going to be loaded, whether it has been successful or whether it threw an error, etc. I would like to access data or say scope object of the current route. How do we achieve that? The answer for all of the above is $route service. So which means using $route service, you can reload or refresh routing content even with new or updated routing parameters. It exposes various properties, methods and events where your application can really take advantage of. These two are a couple of properties available in $route service, that is current and routes. Using current, you have access to routing parameters and even the scope object. So which means if you would like to work with scope object, you can just write $route.current.scope. If you would like to retrieve all the parameter names and values of the route, you can just say $route.current.params. Similarly, in order to list out all the list of routes you have configured through routing provider, you can just say $route.routes. And not just the properties, you also have a couple of methods like reload, which essentially tries to load or say refresh or forcibly reload the current route. Similarly, you have update parameters. So this is quite similar to reload, except that this one has the flexibility to provide some parameter values to the current route where it can really refresh on. It also exposes a couple of events. So which means when a route is going to be fetched, it is going to call this guy. So it is going to raise this, that is route change stat. When a route has been successfully fetched or loaded, it is going to go with this event called route change success. If it throws an error, route change error, and so on. As part of this application, I would like to consume a web service. I developed a very simple web service using Express.js. It does not really matter on what kind of platform you may use to develop a web service. All it really matters is what endpoints are exposed through your web service and the communication pattern. So in this case, I have my web server running at 8000 and currently you can see it is developed using Node, that is Express.js in this case, and I can always go through localhost 8000 and go to the respective URL in order to fetch some data or to do some action. So I'm currently using Postman in order to communicate with my web service and test it. So in this case, you can see I have localhost 8000 and currently this is the endpoint which can be used in order to consume our particular web server. In this case, all I'm trying to achieve is I would like to perform an add operation for these values 10 and 20. So the moment I click send, it actually communicates with the web service and gives the result out as 30. So there is an intentional delay of 3 seconds here just to make sure that it is really fetching the data and we can show some in progress message and so on. So it will not be quite as fast as because there is an intentional delay of 3 seconds for every request of the web service. So as it does add for 10 and 20, similarly we also have another URL which is like multiply with two values 10 and 20. So you can provide any values here, by the way. So the moment I say send, you are going to see the product of these two. In this case it is 2000. So you are multiplying 10 and 200, which results in 2000. So these two are the only exposed URLs or service points available as part of my web service, and I would like to consume these two inside my application. And let us switch to our application. So this is a very simple application where it has got our Angular and AngularRoute, and it is currently having a01.js. So that is my code for the AngularJS, and this is having a typical look for an SPA. So let me show you how it goes. So you can see this is how it is going to look like. So you have a header, you have a left panel, and you have a right panel where all the routing content will be injected inside. So all of that design is available right here. You have header, and you can place all the links here, and this is where all the injected content is going to be made available. And on top of that, I have my Angular application injected with the module called ngRoute, and I'm using the route provider currently being configured with respect to root route and also the otherwise. So which means if the route is not found, it is going to give this message. So this is a typical layout and the minimum whatever we need to have in order to start with my application. And as I mentioned, I would like to communicate with my web service. So in order to communicate with my web service, we have to use AngularJS related factory service or provider service or service patterns, whatever we have in there. And in this case, I would like to use provider service pattern available as part of AngularJS in order to communicate with my web service. For that, I'm going to create a new file and call this one as dataservice.js. You can give any name. So in this case, I'm just providing data service. So in order to save some time, I'm going to have a pre-template, whatever I already typed in earlier. That is, it works with the provider-based service, and I have to provide the URL in which I'm going to connect. So if you go back to my Postman, you can see I'm trying to connect to this URL, that is localhost 8000. And for all of my methods, I'm going to use API. So this is going to be my base URL, for which you can just place it right here. So I'm going to say, in this case, HTTP. So this is my base URL, for which I can add the rest, like add or multiply. So those are all the operations which I can concatenate to this base URL. So that's the first thing. The next thing is that in order to expose any kind of methods to your application, this is where you are going to deal with those or define those methods. So in this case, I would like to have odataservice.add. I'm going to have a new function to be defined. So which means using my application, so which means somewhere around here or in the controller, I would like to access dataservice.add, and I need to provide two values, that is a, b. So those two values are the ones which we are going to send to the web service. So in order to work with the web service, I'm going to say return $HTTP. So that is the service we are going to use as part of our application, and of course it comes with AngularJS anyway. So I had to provide all the options for this one. So the first one is I need to provide the URL. So our URL for the method add is going to be this one. So that is localhost 8000 API add with A and B. So we need to concatenate all of these with the base URL. So the base URL is already right there. So we have the base URL here, which is going to be made available through this base URL variable. So I'm going to use the base URL plus I need to work with add and concatenate the values of A and B. So this is it for the URL. So you can provide any URL, but it has to be somewhat fitting into our particular pattern, whatever the web service is going to accept. And in this case, it is just a get operation. So I would like to provide the method as get, which is going to be default anyway, but just wanted to be precise. Okay, so this is a simple web service call. All it does is it just has HTTP call, which actually goes to this web service, providing these values and get the result out of it. And you are actually returning the promise here. You are not returning the result, you are returning the promise. Okay. So now that we have completed this, the first thing is that we need to include this data service as part of our HTML file. Otherwise, it's not going to know where it has been there. So I just copy and paste here and get the data service out. So that's the next thing. And now I need to create a new route and even the link here. So there is no route which actually does the calculation in my case. So I go to dot when calculate, and at the same time I provide all the options for my route here, and I'm going to say template URL. So I would like to work with calculate.html and the controller. And I would like to have A and B, so that is those two values which are supposed to be provided by the user. So for that I need to define a controller and specify A and B as part of the scope, and then accept those two values directly from the HTML template, that is using text boxes. So let me start with the controller first. And as part of the controller, the first thing is that I need to provide the name of the controller, which is calculate controller in this case. And I need to provide $scope, and I'm going to work with scope anyway. So this is the function of the controller, and I need to work with two values. So those two values I am going to push into A and B respectively. And in order to perform the add operation, I would like to have a method doAdd to be exposed, so that this will be executed by my button. So whenever I click on the button, it has to execute this doAdd, which essentially should call our data service. So I have our data service. So I would like to execute this data service dot add. So for that purpose, I'm going to use data service dot add. But this might not work because this data service is not currently available in this module or in this controller. So we need to inject it. So I'm going to inject that and use it in my function with the same variable. And now I say data service dot add, and this add currently accepts two values, A and B, which are currently available in scope related A and B. So let me get through the scope A, scope B. So currently this is not what I say, we are not going to get the result out of it. This is a promise, so which means this returns a promise. So in this case I have to use .then, so which means whenever it has successfully completed the call, I would like to have this function to be executed. And this function is going to receive the result out of that particular call. So that result is going to have all the information related to the web service response. So in this case, I would like to have that result to be directly assigned to scope result. So whatever the result we receive from the web response is going to be assigned to the result variable of the $scope. So in that way, we have a very simple controller which actually tries to work with the data service in order to get some result based on the input parameters. However, we do not currently have calculate.html, so that needs to be provided. So let me go to new file and create calculate.html. So I'm going to provide some markup here. So as part of this, the first thing is that I need to accept A and B values from the user using text boxes. So I go with input. I'm going to bind this text box to A. So let me have a couple of breaks here. And similarly, I would like to work with B as well. And I would like to have even a button to be defined, and I'm going to call this button as add. And whenever I click on this button, I would like to call my method. So my method is defined in here. So what is the name of the method? That is doAdd. So I'm going to call this method whenever I click on that particular button. So we have A and B as text boxes, and we are going to call doAdd once we click on that method, and we need to have the result also to be displayed. So for that, I'm going to have another div and probably a HR tag so that we can separate from the input content. And I would like to have the result to be displayed with this caption, something like calculator result or whatever. And the current result is going to be made available as part of this result. So that result is going to have a member called data as part of the response, and it has to show the result out of this one. And looks like everything is there. So we have the calculate HTML, we have the data service, we have the controller defined, and let me go to A01. Of course, we need to have a link in order to go to that route. So let me define li first. So that is the list item, and then anchor tag, which actually tries to go to my calculate route. So this is the same route what we have defined in our routing provider. So if everything works fine, it should actually get the result out. So let me refresh this. Okay, so there is some problem here, it is not working. So let me go back to my code and try to fix it. So okay, I need to write something like calculate. It doesn't make sense otherwise. Okay, so go back here. So let me press refresh, and we are going to see calculator right now. So let me clear everything here. So the moment I click on calculator, now you can see it has provided A and B with two text boxes, and you can also see it has fetched calculate.html. So let me clear everything here, and I have a button add calculated result equal to empty, because there is no result currently available and it is just showing empty here. We are going to fix this soon. So I have 10, and I'm going to provide 20 and see what's going on after clicking add. Okay, some problem is there, so let me switch back here, and here is the problem. I had to provide ngClick. So that is the one which is missing, so that was the typo. So let me refresh this, and again I go in here and click add, and now you can see I got a request to API and it has returned 30. So let me clear again, let me refresh this. So let me clear here. So I go in here 1 and I go in here 2 and click add, and after 3 seconds it is going to be displaying 30. So if you go in here, you are going to see the response is 30, and you can also see it is actually going to my web service like localhost 8000 API add 10 and 20, and it is a get request, and the response is going to be 30, which is currently being automatically rendered or injected into our view. So if I provide something like 100 and 200, so let me clear all this stuff and click add. So that is important. After clicking add, it is going to be a delay there because I intentionally provided 3-second delay. So this, in order to refresh this, it takes 3 seconds time. And now after 3 seconds, it is going to be displaying 300. So this is the route of my web service. So you can see I have 8000, 100, 200, and the response is 300 right there. Okay, so that is the simplest way on how we can go with AJAX route. The next thing is that we are going to change our routing parameters or route so that it will be accepting a few or couple more route parameters. So earlier we were just having calc, and now I would like to extend this to something like 3 parameters, option, A and B. Those 3 are the parameters and all of the 3 are optionals. So now, just for our understanding, I just wanted to say something like console.log in controller. So just wanted to make sure that it is actually going through the controller and see how many number of times this controller is being called or when it is being called. And now I would like to modify my do add. So I just wanted to comment this a bit, and I'm going to say path equal to calculate.add. So what I'm trying to accomplish here is that whenever I click on do add, I'm going to change the current URL to this kind of URL. So initially we are going to just land on calc, and you can see these are all optional, so we don't need to provide any of those. So as usual, once I click on this, it actually lands to the calculate with no parameters. But when no parameters are available, and if the user clicks on add, I would like to then go to this new route, that is calculate with add, and as part of this add, I would like to have the values to be sent as well. So in this case, I would like to say scope.a plus scope.b. So this is the new path for which I would like to redirect from the existing path. So which means the existing route is going to be /calc and the new route is going to be /calc add A and B. So this add will be made available as part of this option. The value of this is going to be made available in A. The value of this is going to be made available in B. So I need to switch from the current route calc to this new route. So for that, I'm going to use location, and we need to inject location. So let me take this function to the next line, and we need to use the location here as well. And once the location is available, I can use the same location variable here, dot URL, and specify the path. So all I'm trying to accomplish here is that switch to a new path. Of course, it's not going to do any kind of calculation here, but the moment I click on that button, it is going to be changing our route from /calc to a new route called /calc.add/ all of those stuff. So let me switch back here and see how it is working. So let us go to home, refresh this, clear everything, click on calculator, and you can see right now it is still at /calc. And now the moment I click on add, of course it doesn't matter what values you provide here, we're not calling the data service yet, we commented it. But the goal is whenever I click on add, it has to change this route to the new route. And now you can see it has changed the route from /calc to /calc add 10 and 20. And you can see it is also displaying the controller, so which means it is reloading the same route another time. So let us go back, refresh this, let us clear everything here. So let me get to the calculator. You can see first time it has already loaded the route, and that is the reason we already have our controller to be executed. So I clear this. Now I go to 1, 10 and 20, and the moment I click on add, you can see it has jumped from /calc to all the parameters whatever we defined. It has again executed the controller, but it has not reloaded the same template. So those are all the important things we need to care about. However, as you can see, even though I went to the new route, it has not really taken care about the new parameters. For example, this 10 and 20 need to be placed inside A and B, and obviously I would like to have some kind of add to be performed. So, and I would like to have the result as well. So all of these things need to be still accomplished. So for that purpose, I have to work with route parameters. So which means I need to extract all of these values, provide all of those, and at the same time do some web service call, get the result out of it. So in order to extract these values out of the route URL, you need to work with route parameters. So I go back to my code here. So in this case, I have to first of all inject route parameters. That is important. Why? Because I need to extract the values from the route. So I use the route parameters here. So let us have the same as the variable here. And now let me go in here. So I would like to write something like route parameters.a. If I have the route parameters and if the parameter a has been made available in the route, then the first thing is that I would like to override whatever the value available in A right here. So I'm going to say, please get whatever the value you have in A and place it in the scope. And similarly, I have to do that for the B as well. So let me take this, and I would like to have B as well. And this needs to be B as well. So let us see if it is actually filling up our text boxes with proper values. So I go back here, let me click home and refresh it. Okay, I have a syntax problem somewhere. Okay, I need to provide a comma at the end. So that is always the mistake I'm going to do every time. So let me do one more thing. I go back here, press refresh, click on calculator, and you can see by default it is calculator with the default values. So I provide 10 and I provide 20 and I click on add, and now you can see it has gone to the new route and it is still retaining the values of A and B the same way how I have provided. So similarly, let us consider I am providing 100 and 200 here and press enter. You are going to see those two values as well. Of course, add is not being performed yet. We need to perform add as well. So I come here and I will be checking whether the route parameters related option is available or not, and at the same time whether A is available or not, and at the same time whether B is available or not. So if all the values in the route are defined, then only I am going to perform the task of sum of those two members. So the next thing is that we can have various routes, so I need to ensure that we are really working on the route option with add only. So if it is add, so which means this add is nothing but whatever you are defining right here. So this is the add I'm talking about. So let me go back here. So if that is related to add, then I would like to write some kind of message, something like service call started. So just for our understanding, it is doing some kind of service call there. So on top of that, I would like to bring whatever I have in place here and place right here. So which means I'm performing some task, and that is, in this case, it actually consumes the web service. And once the result is done, I would like to have some kind of message, console.log service call completed. And if we are going to provide any other option than add, I just would like to redirect to route or just the calculation. So I'm just going to say location.url calc. So let me see if this is working. So I go back here, press home, refresh, go back to calculator, clear everything. I provide 10 and I provide 20. So once I'm here, I click on add, and now you can see it says service call started, and now it says service call completed. And once it has completed, you are going to see 30. So you are having the add or sum of those two values to be performed along with getting the result, and at the same time modifying the route values as well. So you have calculate, add, 10 and 20. So similarly, if you provide 200 here and press enter, you are going to see service call started, completed. So immediately after completed, you are going to see 210, performing all the values right there. Now let us add the multiply functionality. So just like we have finished add, let us do the multiply as well. The first thing is that I need to add this, that is multiply, and I need to use multiply, and that is pretty much it. There's nothing much special. I'm just exposing the method multiply, and it has to go to a different service endpoint. Still works with A and B, and it is just a get. So I'm done with the service. So let me close this guy. And now in the calculate.html, I would like to have one more button called multiply, and I would like to expose another method called multiply here. And now I switch back to A0S, and this is going to be simpler. You can see do add, just like do add, I am going to have do multiply. So all I have to do is just copy and paste a new method and call that one as do multiply. And instead of add, I would like to perform multiply here. So just like add, I am performing multiply with those two values and asking us to change the route. And now it is going to change the route from add to multiply or from calc to multiply. So whenever it is doing that, I need to catch that as part of the option, because this multiply or add is always going to be retrieved through the option. So I need to make sure that it has to perform a different action whenever I press on multiply. So else if, and if is multiply, I am going to say instead of add, always go to multiply. So this is pretty much I have in place. So we have the result, service call completed, and it should work the way we are expecting it. So let us see. I go back here, go home and refresh it. And now let me go to calculator. Let me see the network request as well. So I clear everything. and now I perform 1, 2, so which means 10 and 20. Click add, it has to go to add, and you can see service call started, completed, and I get the result. Now instead of doing add, I am going to click on multiply. So I go in here, and now you can see it has gone to multiply 10 and 20, and once the service call has been completed, you are getting the result 200. Clear? And let me do the same thing once again. So which means I'm currently on multiply with those two values. I already did the multiplication earlier, so let me do or hit the same button once again and see what's going on. So I click on here. There are no network requests happening. If you can see, I click on multiply. Nothing is being performed. But the moment I click on add, it has performed the add operation and it has completed it. Let me clear this. I click on add again, and now you can see it's not working. I click on multiply. Yes, it works. But again, clicking on multiply, it doesn't work again. Again, I click on add. It works. However, once it has completed, it's not going to work again. So what's going on? So we are saying that once we click on add, it has to go to the same location. And the same location is already there with the same values. So AngularJS is smart enough to say that, okay, you are already on the same location, that is same route, with the same routing parameters. You already have everything accomplished. Why do you need to go to the server again? I just show the same. Maybe Angular is quite smart here, but that may not be really ideal in every situation. So we need to handle this. So which means once I click on add, regardless of the cache, whatever it is doing, I really want my particular application to be reloading the current route. So which means if I am currently on add, every time I click on add, I really want my particular application to go to the service and get the result out. Let me change the route. So which means I click on 10 and 200 and click add. Now AngularJS figured out, okay, there is a change in the route. I need to go to the server, do something and return back. It did. But again, clicking on add, it is not going to do because you are on the same route. So I need to force it to reload and ask it to ignore whatever the cache it has for the same route. So in order to accomplish that, that is where we will be using $route. So let me go back here and I will be injecting $route. So this is the one what I was talking about in the presentation. And I always forget this comma right here. So this is the variable I am going to use. So in order to fix this, I go to do add. So where is this do add? Right here. And we have the path. Everything is fine. And here all we are saying is go to this URL. And this might not really work as we have already seen. So all we have to say is if the current location is already the same path, we have to ask it to reload. If the current location is not the same path as earlier, then we will say go to this URL. So in order to achieve that, I am going to use a simple if condition, location.path. So I am going to get the current path in the URL. So that is our routing path. And if it is the same as our path variable here, so which means if this path is the same as the current browser URL, I am going to say force reload, and that is where our reload is going to be coming into picture. So we have our reload, so that is our route. So I'm going to use route dot reload. So which means I'm going to say that please load it forcibly. If it is not, so which means these two do not match. So if such is the case, I will be just going with the same one which actually worked earlier. So if the paths are same, I'm just asking it to force reload. If the paths are not same, I'm just redirecting to that. As simple as that. So I go back here. Let's go home and refresh it. And I click on calculator. I provide 10. I provide 20. So let me clear everything here and click add. And you can see started and completed. So I got the result out. So let me clear now, and let me clear, and I click add again. Now you can see it still does the same operation as it did earlier because we are loading it forcibly. So every time you click on add now, it is still going to perform the same operation over and over again, as because you have asked it to reload it even though you were on the same route with the same values. So that is how you can use $route. Okay. So let us take this to the next level. So which means I would like to call the same route with different values, like instead of 10 and 20, I would like to say 100 and 200. Of course, we are already performing that, like something like 200 here. So it still works, no issues. Okay, but I would like to make use of $route.update parameters. So which means I would like to have a new button called refresh. So the moment I say refresh, it has to automatically go to the current route and just modify these values to new values whatever we have in the scope, and then refresh or reload the current route. So that is what I'm trying to perform. So in order to achieve that, I go back here, I go to the calculate. So I will be adding one more button. So let me separate that button with a pipe so that we will know like this is a different one. So I'm going to call this one as update result or whatever. And I'm going to call a method something like do update results. And I'm going to use this right here. $scope function. Okay, so this is the function. So as part of this one, I would like to have a reload. So let us see route.reload is working or not. So let us see if this is working. I go back here, click home, refresh it. I go to calculator, and now you can see I have a new button called update result. I have 10 and 20 here. I click on add. I have something performed. So let me clear everything. And now I click on update result. Yes, indeed it worked. And you can see I have some results. But there is a kind of a flaw there. So what if I provide 100 and 200 and provide update result? So update result actually calls only reload. So reload means it just reloads the current route. It will not figure out what the values are available. It just reloads this route. So even though I have two new different values, the moment I click on update result, you can see it did not consider two new values. It has got back to the previous route, which is our current route, and it just did the way it is supposed to do. So we need to fix this one. So in order to do that, as we already knew, reload is not going to work. I am going to use route.update params. So this is going to be the parameter. So that is the object. So I can provide new values while it is trying to update the route. So I can provide something like scope.a, and at the same time b should be the value of scope.b. So what I'm saying here is that whenever it is trying to reload the route, I'm asking it to actually update the route parameters a and b with the values of scope a and scope b. So update parameters indeed actually reloads. So update parameters is not just updating, it actually is updating the route parameters and then reloading it. So it does both of the jobs at the same time. So the moment I do this, let me go back here, go to home, refresh this, and now I'm going to say calculator, and let me go with 10 and I go with 20. I clear everything here, click add. Okay, it did the operation, so which is 30. I clear everything here, and now I provide 100 and 200. So at this moment, whenever I say here, it actually gets the values from the scope, updates these two values, and reloads that new route. And now you can see I have 100 and 200. So that is how it is going to do. So similarly, let me clear this. Let me go with multiply. Yes, and now it should be doing multiplication here. And now I am going to say something like 5 and 6 and try to update the result. Yes, it still updated it. So you can see this update result always goes with the current route. However, it actually modifies the values whatever we have in the route with the new values whatever you have specified from the scope. It still goes with the same operation or the latest operation you performed because it goes with the route. This guy doesn't know about these two. This guy only knows about the route and the values to be replaced. So that is how you can use $route.update parameters. And now let us explore the $route object a bit. So for that, I just wanted to modify my do add by just writing console.log and just provide $route here. So whenever I click on do add, it is supposed to show me the $route object right inside the console. So I go in here, I click refresh, and once I'm here, I can go to the calculator and I can say something like 1 and 20 and click add. So the moment I do that, you can see I have the route object automatically displayed. So if you open it, you are going to see all the members of the $route object, which are nothing but current, reload, routes, and update parameters. So if you open current, you are essentially going to see all the information related to the current route. That is all the parameters. You can see A value as 10, you can see right here A value as 10 and B value as 20, and even the option as add. So those are all the parameters which you can always get from current.params. And on top of that, you can also get access to the scope as mentioned in my presentation. So you can have access to the scope of the current controller of the current route, and you still have all that information like A, B, do, add, do, multiply, and all of that good stuff. And on top of that scope, you also have $route, and that is the internal member, which you can take advantage of it sometimes. And you can always get original path, and at the same time you can also get all the keys. Means you're also going to see like what are all the parameter names available and what parameters are optional, and you have the current object in that way. And on top of that, reload we have already seen. That is a function where you can force reload the current route, and at the same time you have update parameters, which we already seen. And this is routes, which essentially gives you all the list of routes you have configured as part of your routing provider, and each of the route in general will be provided with twice. So which means the route is provided twice, your calc is provided twice, and so on. Why? Because twice you always have one route with whatever you have specified and another route with a suffix slash, which means both of these two will be treated as same internally. However, whenever you actually ask the routes to give the list, it gives both of those separately. But indeed, it really works with both of those two automatically and in the same fashion internally. So this is pretty much about the $route object. And now it is time to actually switch to routing events. So as mentioned in my presentation, we have all the events like change stat, change success, and so on. And in order to actually consume those particular events, you have to use app.run. So this is the one which actually tries to execute your function once app is almost ready. And in this case, I would like to use a route scope. So that is route scope. And I would like to have my function to be executed. And obviously I would like to use route scope as part of my function, and this route scope has got a method called $on. So that is a method which we are going to use to actually hook up all the events at the application level. So in our case, the events are something like a route change stat. So you can use this guy right now, and at the same time the event handler function. So this event handler right now is going to receive 3 parameters as part of this event route change stat. So those parameters are event itself, the current route, and the previous route. So the current route means to which route you are trying to go, and previous route means from which route you are going to go to another route. So this is the previous route, so which means you are leaving that route and you are switching to this route. And you can always get that information in any way, but in this case I would like to use just the console, and I'm going to use in with route change stat, and similarly I can also use another one, that is route change success. And let us see if these events are going to be shown for each of those routes we are trying to switch. So I go to home, press refresh, and now you can see it says route change has started and it has been successful. So which means it has done successfully. So now I go to calculator, and now you can see it has jumped from the previous route to another route. So for each of the routes you really jump from, you are always going to see those particular events fired. So let me clear off everything. But if you need more information about the previous route or the current route, you can always go through those objects. So for example, I just wanted to show how the current object would look like, and pretty much the same thing you are going to see in the previous as well. So let me comment this for a second so that we will have more concentration on just the object alone. So I go here, refresh this. So this is the current object. So the moment you open it, you can see this is pretty much similar to the $route object, except that this doesn't have the reload or update parameter related methods and so on. And you can see the parameters object are right here, and at the same time you also have the route related information like the original path and the keys and so on. So you have all that information and access to the scope as well if really necessary. And you can see right now the scope doesn't have any values here because you are at the root level, but you can still access that information if really necessary. And this is one way. So you can always have more information using the current and previous objects regarding the current route and the previous route, all the parameters, their paths, parameter values and so on. And apart from these two, you also have a couple more events, not just related to $route in general, but location change stat and location change success. You can also make use of those. For example, you have a couple more events, and those events are very similar to $route but not related to $route though. Those are related to location service in general. So I can also say like location change stat. So you can also make use of this location change stat. And again, this location is not related to $route. This location change stat is related to location service. So I can have one more location and I can say success. So you can use any of these based on your requirements. But one important thing is that first of all it fires the location and then it goes to route. So location is the browser one. So this one gets fired always before the route. So let us go back here and click home and click refresh. And now you can see the first event which fired was location change stat, and after that route change been fired, and after that you have location change success and then the route change success. So similarly, if I clear everything, I go to this and provide something like 1 and 2, you can see already it has started providing the messages, but the moment I click on add, it is still the same concept. You have location change stat and so on, and then the controller and then the service call and so on. It is pretty easy to get the current URL directly from the location change stat. So actually it is not the current object, it is just the URL. This is an object which contains more information about the route, but this is not the route, it is just only the URL. You are not going to see more information other than URL here because it's just a string. But you have other things like current state and previous state and so on, which you can take advantage of. But I leave it to you actually to explore about all of these by just writing directly those objects to the console and see what's going on. But in our case, I can just say the current URL just for our understanding. So I am going to say current URL with the URL, and let us do the same thing right here as well. And I need to have the same kind of definition here also. So let us see if this is working. So I go back here, refresh this, and now you should be able to see our location with the respective URL, including the domain and the path along with the route path with route parameters, their values and so on. So this gives the entire URL basically, and on top of that, if you need more information, you can still get to the current state and previous state. So you can use any of those based on the necessity. So this is pretty much about how to handle the events in general. Okay, so let me comment all of these and let me comment even the console whatever I did earlier. So one annoying thing from the very beginning is our calculations happening successfully, but there is a delay, and obviously we will be expecting a couple of delays whenever we are using web services and calling multiple times and so on. So even in our case, whenever I click on add, it has completed immediately. So let me click on multiply. So you can see it is actually delayed for 3 seconds. And that 3 seconds you can actually get to see from the console. So the moment I click on add, looks like it has been already cached in the browser. So let me click on multiply. You can see it has started, and after 3 seconds it is giving completed. What I would like to see here is that while that service is in progress, I would like to show something like loading, some kind of message, and once it has successfully completed, then only I would like to see this calculated result. So I would like to show some kind of progress message saying that it is loading or currently in progress kind of a deal. And we already know that service call started and service call completed can be used where you would like to have some kind of messaging to be communicated to your template. So how I can achieve it? Okay. So here you can see console.log service call started. So which means this is the statement which goes to the service. Just prior to this service, I would like to say something like $scope.isLoading equals true. So this is just a simple member which I am going to add to $scope. This could be any variable. Once it has completed the loading part, I would like to say something like isLoading is actually false. So which means the loading has been successfully completed. So I can just hold on to this console for now. And similarly, I would like to use even for this one. And I'm going to see that right here as well. And I'm going to use this isLoading right inside my template. So if this isLoading is true, I'm going to show a different div. If this isLoading is false, I'm going to show another div. So for that purpose, I'm going to modify this a bit. So I'm going to add a new div for the message, and that message, obviously I would like to have some HR here, and I would like to create a span with color red so that I can say like loading in red color, for example. So I'm going to say loading, please wait. So to make it beautiful, you can actually have any kind of image or GIF or whatever to be made available right here. So I would like to have this div to be actually displaying ngShow, and that too whenever our variable isLoading is actually true. So this is nothing but the variable which gets bound. So you can see that is the one I'm going to get here. So similarly, I need to modify this a bit. I do not want to show this one until and unless I have the isLoading is really false. So for that matter, I'm going to say the easiest way I can make use of a result in this case. That is easy because I am focusing on result. You can also use isLoading, whatever you would like to see. So I can either say ng hide also I can use, and I can say isLoading equal to true. I would like to hide this one. You can use any of those options. So let us see if this is working fine. Let me reload this. So now go to 1 and go to 20 and click add. Okay, looks like it is not working here because the browser should have cached a bit. So let me see the network and see what's going on. So I go to the calculate HTML, and you can see our HTML is not available here. I don't see load message and so on. The browser has already cached it. So let me clear the browser cache completely and see if that really works. So I clear and refresh a couple of times, and let me go to the home, and of course I am at home. Let me see if this calc HTML is having our isLoading. Yeah, there you go. Now you see loading right here. So I go in 1, I go in 2 and click add, and now you can see I'm having please wait, and after 3 seconds I am going to get back the result. Once again I go with 200, click this one, and now you can see it is waiting there for a couple of seconds and then giving me. And similarly, let us see if multiply is also doing the same. Yes, it does, because I am working with isLoaded variable. So this is how you can actually provide some kind of progressive image or progressive message when AJAX calls are happening behind the scenes. So I think we covered pretty much about $route object completely as part of this video, and in the next video most likely we will be looking into the resolve.